Afternoon. I'm Keith Holloway, the Media Relations Officer for the investigation into the fatal March 15, 2022 head-on collision between a pickup truck and a transit van near Andrews, Texas. We are here to answer questions from the preliminary report that was released earlier today. Conducting the availability will be NTSB Director of Office of Highway Safety, Robert Malloy, spelled ROBERTMOLLOY. Following his brief remarks, he will take questions. To ask a question, select a question icon on the upper right hand of the screen. The icon is depicted with a question mark in a box. Type your question along with your name and media affiliation and submit it. I will read the questions. The entire briefing, including the Q&A, will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel, ntsb.gov, later today or tomorrow. At this point, I will turn it over to Dr. Malloy.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Malloy, the Director of the Board's Office of Highway Safety. Earlier today, we released the preliminary report for our investigation of the two-vehicle head-on crash in Andrews, Texas that occurred on March 15, 2022. On behalf of all of us at the NTSB, I'd like to offer my deepest sympathies to those who were affected by this tragedy. I would like to highlight 3 items from the preliminary report. First, evidence collected to date in our investigation indicates that the driver of the pickup in this crash was a 38-year-old male and not the 13-year-old male as originally reported at the time of the crash. Second, toxicological testing of the 38-year-old driver of the pickup truck indicated the presence of methamphetamine in his blood. Finally, although preliminary evidence gathered at the scene indicated that a catastrophic tire failure may have occurred, subsequent teardown and detailed examination of the wheel and hub assembly, as well as review of the available roadway evidence, have provided no evidence of such a failure. Investigative activities are ongoing with the intent of determining a probable cause and making recommendations to prevent similar events. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this point.
We will now begin taking questions from the news media. Again, to ask a question, select the question icon on the upper right hand of your screen. The icon is depicted with a question mark in a box. Type your question along with your name, media affiliation, and submit it. I will read the questions. We will allow a few minutes for the questions to come in. Question from Jonathan Pileski, News West 9. Were there any reports of any sort of automotive failure in the pickup truck?
At this time, the investigation is ongoing and the vehicle factor specialist is still preparing their report. So at this time, nothing new to report there.
David Mack from BuzzFeed. Can you talk about what led you to believe the 13-year-old was the driver to begin with?
So just as a frame of reference, this was a very high energy collision. The roadway speed was 75 miles an hour and the primary impact direction was head on. As a result of that, there was a lot of damage, catastrophic damage to the vehicle. In addition, there was a post-crash fire. This made understanding some of the details of the crash very difficult. I won't go into the particulars out of concern to the family of how the team decided that, but this was a team decision that at the time they believed the 13-year-old was driving.
Jamie Stingle from AP asked similar question, but one of the aspects of his question is, was speed a factor in this crash?
So certainly speed is something, as the board is espousing a safe systems approach. Speed is something that we're very concerned about. Speed is also a element of one of our 5 most wanted list items. So we're certainly looking at speed and what role it may have had in this crash.
Donzen Palesic of News West 9 would like to know, do you believe that any highway lighting could have helped drivers on both sides see each other more clearly?
Certainly, and right now, both the highway factors group and the human performance groups are looking at any roadway factors or human performance factors that could have helped prevent this crash. So that's investigation. That aspect is still ongoing.
Jamie Stingle from AP, do you know the level of meth in the driver's system and if that contributed to the crash?
So right now, we just received the toxicological report yesterday. We haven't had a chance to really go into a lot of detail of it. We know that it was found in his system. Certainly, we know that meth can affect driver performance. We have seen this in the past. The Chattanooga crash we investigated in Tennessee. We talk about meth and the effects it can have on drivers. But at this point, it's too early to say if the finding that we have from the toxicological report had any factor or any contributing to this crash itself.
Question from Katie with CBS. How fast were they going? And she apologized if she's missed that question before.
So right now, all I've said is that the roadway speed was 75 miles an hour. We have a technical reconstructionist who is working on a report that will help us determine the speed. And that's something we do like to report when we can in preliminary reports. However, at this time, we haven't determined that yet.
Greg Wallace from CNN. Could you please speak to what evidence led NTSB to believe there was a tire failure and what has since led NTSB to believe that is not the case?
So with regard to the initial reports, we certainly had a vehicle crossing over, and the early reports we had is it may have been a tire failure. That is something that can happen in this type of crash. So it is something we look at. Again, the catastrophic nature of the crash and sort of the direction where the two vehicles came together, that left front tire that we're talking about was the one that took the most damage. And so we then had the wheel sent to our NTSB Research and Engineering Lab, and our materials lab within that office did a comprehensive evaluation of that wheel. And based on their evaluation of the wheel, they found no evidence of a catastrophic failure.
David Mack from BuzzFeed wanted to know, was there any apology made to the family of the 13-year-old for incorrectly saying he was the driver? So
I will say that the families and the victims have access to our family assistance member. They were made aware of this report coming out this morning, and they can reach out to our family assistance team member for any questions they have.
Katie with CBS. Also, were the individuals thrown from the truck?
So at this time, I think that's still part of the survival factors report that they're documenting, and that's still to be determined.
Amanda Miley from ABC News wanted to know, have you been able to determine if any of the occupants were wearing seatbelts at the time of the crash?
So I think something like that crosses over from the factual into analysis, and that is something certainly my survival factors specialist is looking at. But at this time, we're not going to report on that yet. I don't even know if we've completely determined that for everyone yet.
Jonathan Plessic. Were there any sort of rumble strips in the middle of the roadway that could have alerted the driver that he was crossing lanes?
My understanding is there was something in the middle of the roadway. The exact type they used of warning drivers about crossovers, I can't say at this time.
Ruth Campbell with Odessa American. Were both vehicles going the same speed? How long will it be before the final report is issued?
So at this time, my technical reconstructionist is still working with all the team members to come up with information on the crash dynamics. So that is something clearly we're looking into. With regard to when the final report will be issued, we are just now, we're ending kind of the investigative phase where we're gathering information and looking at what issues there may be. Obviously, the new information that just came in for the human performance investigator will need to be evaluated. But right now, I see us being able to finish a report in mid-2023.
Dr. Malloy, we getting a couple of questions. If you can just explain again what led to the initial reports of the 13-year-old driving the vehicle?
So, as I said earlier, this was a very difficult investigation to determine some of the facts based on the catastrophic nature of the damage and the post-crash fire. However, based upon the review of the crash scene, the team worked together and came up with consensus that the driver was the 13-year-old based upon evidence they had at the time and what they were seeing. As I said, subsequently, this was a difficult question. So DNA testing was performed to confirm that. And as a result of the DNA testing, we now know that the older adult was the driver.
Okay. We'll take about 2 more questions. Samantha Jark from KAMC. What in the initial investigation led to the belief of the failure of the left tire? And what evidence changed that?
So again, sometimes these crossover crashes can be caused by a tire failure. So that's why it's something we were looking at. There was a lot of damage to that section of the vehicle. So that was sort of a difficult issue to determine. The tire was missing, but with regards to how we were able to determine that was not the case, is we sent the wheel to the our research and engineering lab, and their materials lab looked at the wheel itself and the damage to that wheel to see if there's any characteristics you would see when a catastrophic tire failure occurred, and we did not see evidence of that.
Matthew Alvarez from CBS 7. Based on evidence of meth in the pickup truck driver, were there any 911 calls, reports prior to the crash or anything like that?
So at this time, we're still working on collecting all the information. And as I said, that the information about the methamphetamines in the driver's blood just came to us. But right now, I'm not in the position to talk about that as the analysis is still going.
Okay. All right, I think we addressed most of the questions. Well, this concludes today's NTSB media availability. Thank you for participating. A recording of the availability will be made available on NTSB's YouTube channel as soon as feasible. Follow-up questions should be directed to NTSB Media Relations at ntsb.gov or 202-314-6100. Thank you.